She gave up food for books. What the millionaire CEO did next is bone-chilling. In the glimmering shadows of Manhattan, where power and secrets intertangle, there lived a woman who was both adored and feared. Eleanor Winters, a billionaire CEO, decided one day to defy nature itself. She stopped eating. Yes, you heard right. The woman traded steak for stories, pasta for pages, and her executive dining table became a fortress of hardcovers. Friends whispered behind her back while gripped by disbelief. How could this cunning businesswoman, known for crushing her competition, starve herself? Rumors swirled that she had uncovered something sinister lurking within the chapters of old tomes. Daring to unravel mysteries, Eleanor became obsessed. Her sleek offices revolved around mountains of books, each one seemingly alive with whispers. The strange part? Her health didn't decline. In fact, she appeared more vibrant, with glimmering eyes and skin glowing like a pearly moon. Something unnatural was happening, and those who dared to look closer would catch her speaking in hushed tones to the volumes as if they were a trusted counsel. Stranger still, her company's profits skyrocketed. As if by magic, the very moment she relinquished food, deals poured in. The air buzzed with tension as her colleagues exchanged grave glances. Was it her newfound wisdom? Or had she struck a deal with forces that should not be trifled with? As she soared higher in the corporate world, unsettling changes crept into her life. The strange figure in a long coat started appearing outside her window, lurking in the dim evening light. They never approached but always watched. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Days ticked by, but the mystery-deepened books began to vanish from her shelves just as fast as they came in. Whispers from her employees grew louder, she's losing control. Some even murmured, Eleanor's become possessed. But the reality of what she truly unleashed would soon surface, a chilling realization that echoed her own hunger for knowledge. One night, as the city breathed beneath a shroud of fog, the figure outside her window stepped into her realm. Just as Eleanor turned to confront the intruder, an icy breeze swept through her office, and everything went deathly still. What was waiting in the shadows? Eleanor's heart raced as she faced the silhouette. The figure stepped into the flickering light of her office, revealing a face partially obscured by the brim of a wide hat. Sharp features emerged like a shard of glass, and a chill ran down Eleanor's spine. This wasn't just an intruder, this was a harbinger of something dark. Eleanor Winters, the figure intoned, their voice a haunting echo. It was almost melodic but carried an undercurrent of danger. The name tumbled from their lips, wrapping around the silence. She tightened her grip on the edge of her desk, willing the pounding in her chest to subside. What did this stranger want with her? She thought of her empire and everything she had sacrificed for it. Who are you? She demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. I come with a message, the figure said, stepping closer. Eleanor felt the air grow thick, almost suffocating. Your journey into the depths of knowledge has awakened forces beyond your understanding. A shiver of dread coursed through her. Had she really unearthed something from the pages of her books? Had her obsession cost her more than she anticipated? She wanted to dismiss it, to laugh it off as nonsense, but the truth clung to her throat like a noose. Don't play games with me, she replied, a mix of anger and fear bubbling to the surface. I've built everything on my own. I'm not terrified of shadows. The figure chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. And yet, here you are. As books leave your shelves, so does your grip on reality. Knowledge has a price, Eleanor. What are you willing to pay? Suddenly, a gust of wind howled through the room, flinging papers off her desk and sending her prized volumes tumbling to the floor. The shadows stretched and warped, and Eleanor fought to keep her footing. Stop. she shouted, the command echoing off the walls. Just tell me what you want. The figure took another step closer, revealing that beneath the hat was a face marked with ethereal beauty yet twisted by something unnameable. I want to offer you a choice, a path deeper than you've ever imagined. Their eyes glimmered with an unnatural light, refracting an enticing danger. Join me, and together we can seize the magic hidden within the books. Magic? Eleanor scoffed, despite the knot of longing forming in her gut. But the shadows flickered in tandem with her doubts, whispering promises of power and potential. Consider what you've already sacrificed, the figure urged, extending a pale hand toward her. You've forsaken food, now you can forsake the mundane entirely. Knowledge can grant you everything, but what will you give in return? Eleanor hesitated, a rush of temptation flooding her mind. The energy resonated deep within her, tugging at her ambition, her hunger for power, and the thrill of uncovering hidden truths. But a creeping feeling gnawed at her, the essence of control slipping. With a reckless heart, she asked the question that burned in her chest, what happens if I refuse? The figure's smile morphed into a grotesque frown, the shadows rippling ominously. Refusal comes with consequences. After all, knowledge is not something that can be forgotten without a cost. And I assure you the darkness remembers. The moment lingered like a live wire. Eleanor's breath hitched. The shadows coiled around her, pulsing with life. The decision loomed before her, taunting her frail sense of security. Just then, memories of her unquenchable hunger flooded her thoughts, her insatiable appetite for success, control, and, yes, more knowledge. Was this a fateful crossroads? Then, before she could grapple with the enormity of her choice, the figure whispered, decide wisely, Eleanor. I will be waiting. And with that, they dissolved into the shadows, leaving Eleanor alone in the quiet chaos of her office, a storm of thoughts swirling within her. What have I stumbled into? As dread seeped into her bones, she understood one undeniable truth: this was only the beginning. How deep was she willing to dive into the abyss? What awaited her in those pages, and would she uncover the darkness within herself before it was too late? Eleanor stood frozen in the aftermath of the figure's departure. The silence in her office now felt deafening, an echo of the choices looming before her. She glanced around the room, her sanctuary transformed into a prison of her own making. The flickering light made the shadows dance unnaturally, and every corner of her mind screamed with confusion. The wind had settled, but the chill still lingered. With a clenched jaw, she stepped forward, picking up one of the fallen books. Its spine was cracked, a testament to her relentless pursuit of knowledge. She had read an incalculable number of texts in her life, devoured them like a starving child at a feast. But now, the words blurred in her mind. Had they all led her to this dark precipice? Knowledge has a price, she muttered to herself, the phrase intertwining with her swirling thoughts. A part of her yearned for the possible dark magic the figure had hinted at, but another, more rational part rebelled. What was she willing to sacrifice? Days turned into nights, and Eleanor found herself overwhelmed. Shadows whispered her name in the quiet hours. The figure's words haunted her, weaving through her dreams, pulling her toward an unknown fate. She began to notice strange occurrences around her. Books she'd never recalled purchasing arrived at her doorstep, volumes filled with esoteric knowledge, faded symbols etched into their covers. The office, once a bustling space of productivity, felt like a realm of entrapment. Each morning brought a new wave of unease. She stopped meeting with clients, her empire crumbling under the weight of her obsession. Her friends, the few she hadn't pushed away, began to worry. Texts went unanswered, calls went to voicemail. The price she paid in hunger for her goals felt surreal now. She was losing more than she had ever gained. One stormy evening, just as she prepared to bury herself in another book, a sudden knock shattered the stillness. The sound reverberated through her chest, striking her heart like a drum. Who would dare disturb her? Fear curdled in her stomach as she slowly approached the door. Taking a deep breath, she opened it, revealing an unexpected visitor, her old mentor, Dr. Samuel Reed. His eyes were wide with concern. Eleanor. I've been worried sick. You need to stop this madness. What do you know about it? She snapped, the shadows around her flickering in response to her anger. "I know you," he replied softly, stepping inside. "I know what it's like to delve too deeply into the unknown. You're chasing something that will consume you. You don't have to face it alone." His words sparked a flicker of resentment. She didn't need anyone. She was Eleanor Winters, a self-made mogul. Yet, as his gaze pierced her, the familiar warmth of friendship chipped away at her resolve. But then, a sound filled the air, an echoing laughter that wasn't Samuel's. Eleanor's heart sank, a freezing dread washing over her. The shadows constricted, swirling ethereally as the figure from her dreams emerged from the dark recesses of her mind. Their presence enveloped the room, and their voice twisted around them like smoke. "You've brought company to the table, Eleanor. How quaint." Eleanor glanced at Samuel, who stood frozen, the color draining from his face. The darkness closing in felt tangible, suffocating. Why are you doing this?" she choked out, feeling her dreams close around her like a vice. The figure's smile widened, a macabre curve that sent another wave of ice down her spine. "You opened the door to secrets that crave illumination, and they've come to play. But the question is, what will you sacrifice to keep them at bay?" Samuel's hand gripped her shoulder tightly, as if grounding her. The room thickened with tension, the walls pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "Eleanor," Sam urged, his voice low and urgent. "We need to leave. This isn't right." But as the shadows writhed, something in Eleanor flickered to life, a fierce need to reclaim her power, to confront whatever darkness had awakened. The figure's challenge echoed in her mind, tantalizing and horrific. "Stay with me," she whispered, the request barely escaping her lips. She had to make a choice, but the stakes had just escalated. Would she choose the safety of the known, or plunge into the depths of her greed for knowledge? The shadows pulsed, and she could almost hear them whispering. "What will you sacrifice, Eleanor?" The figure's laughter filled the room, drowning out the truth that lay just out of reach. And in that moment, she realized nothing would ever be the same again. As fear and conviction battled within her, she would have to decide. And soon the darkness would not be patient. How deep was she willing to tread into this malicious abyss, when the line between knowledge and madness blurred dangerously? The laughter echoed, wrapping around Eleanor like a cold fog. Time seemed to freeze. Samuel's voice faded into a whisper as the figure stepped closer, their forms shifting in the dim light like smoke curling in the air. Eleanor's heart kicked wildly in her chest. "Sacrifices," the figure breathed, enticing and sinister, their words gliding through the room like a serpent. "What are you willing to forfeit to keep the darkness at bay? Your boyfriend? Your wealth? Or even your sanity?" Eleanor swallowed hard, her throat dry as sandpaper. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet a sinister curiosity tugged her closer. She glanced at Samuel, who was still gripping her shoulder, his fingers like anchors. His horrified gaze implored her to run. "Eleanor," he urged, but his voice felt distant, muted by the encroaching shadows. She hesitated, the weight of her choices pressing down like a heavy cloak. "I want to let them take me." A shroud of darkness enveloped the figure, swirling and flickering, revealing glimpses of faces and voices lost in torment. Eleanor shuddered, remembering stories of those who had dabbled in forbidden magic, how they had become ghosts of their former selves, eternally trapped by the knowledge they had sought to control. "Your defiance is amusing," the figure said, their eyes glowing like embers in the night. "But your determination means nothing in the grand scheme. You seek power, but every boon demands a price." With that, the shadows lunged toward her, tendrils reaching out. Eleanor felt the air turn sour, her breath catching in her throat. It was as if the very essence of her fears had materialized, a horrific collage of her insecurities. Shadows of self-doubt danced, taunting her, and for a brief moment, she felt herself unraveling. "Stay grounded, Eleanor." Samuel's voice was sharp, cutting through the haze. He stepped forward, positioning himself between her and the figure. "I want to let it take you." In an instant, the room was filled with a blinding light as Samuel called upon the knowledge he once shared with her, a spell woven from their time together, crafted to repel malevolence. For one heartbeat, the shadows recoiled, seething and swirling as if caught in a storm of their own making. But it was fleeting. The figure laughed again, a sound that sent tremors through Eleanor's soul. Foolish man. You think you can protect her? This power runs deeper than you know. She is already ensnared. Eleanor. Samuel's voice was fierce, and she could see the desperation in his eyes. We have to. Before he could finish, the darkness surged forward. In an act of defiance, Eleanor thrust her arm out, the ancient sigil she had studied so many hours suddenly burning bright on her palm. No! She screamed, willing the shadows back, forcing the power within her to bend to her will. The figure faltered, surprise painting their shadowy features. You are brave, but bravery does not shield you from madness. The rush of energy pulsed through her veins, the power intoxicating and terrifying. She could feel the dark magic whispering, promising her enlightenment, urging her to dive deeper. And in that moment, the memories of her past decisions flooded back. Countless hours spent alone, the friends she had neglected, the sanity she had risked. The line between knowledge and madness was so fine it blurred before her eyes. I won't sacrifice anything more. She roared, defiant against the encroaching wave. But what would be left of her when the dust settled? The shadows shrieked and twisted violently around her, revealing glimpses of her triumphs and failures. The allure of secrets long buried clawed at her heart, whispering promises of power and understanding. Had she truly made her decision? The fog thickened, time here abruptly stretching like a taut wire. What had started as a quest for clarity now transformed into a fight for her very essence. Was she strong enough to resist? Or would the profound allure of forbidden knowledge lead her into oblivion? The darkness surged again, this time faster and fiercer. Inside her, a tempest brewed, and Eleanor felt the weight of a monumental choice settle like ashes around her. In that moment of uncertainty, she realized one thing: their laughter was not the last she'd hear. As the shadows edged ever closer, and the past and present twisted through the dark, Eleanor braced for the reckoning. Would she uncover the truth, or would the darkness consume her legacy whole? The final question hung heavy in the air: what price would she ultimately pay for the knowledge she so desperately craved? Eleanor's heart pounded like a relentless drum. She focused on the sigil glowing in her palm, its light combating the dark tendrils that swirled around her. Each pulse felt like a beacon against the creeping shadows. Samuel stepped closer, his eyes wide with fear and determination, but Eleanor could sense his strength wavering. Hold on. Just hold on. He shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. We'll break through. But the figure stood there, a malevolent grin stretching across their semi-translucent face, as if feasting on their desperation. Such resolve, yet so misplaced. You cannot outshine the darkness when it has already woven itself into your very essence. Eleanor clenched her jaw, forcing her mind to focus. Each whisper from the shadows, each doubt, threatened to drown her. I can do this, she murmured, though whether she believed it or if it was for Samuel's sake she couldn't tell. In that swirling blackness, familiar faces began to emerge, lost friends, opportunities she let slip, and the image of her former self, the self that craved acceptance, glory, and power at any cost. It was a mirror reflecting every choice she had made, every moment she regretted. Eleanor, their voices twisted together, each word laced with anguish. You have the power to change this. Let the darkness consume you. It is your destiny. No. She cried out, fighting the urge to kneel under the weight of their pleas. I will not surrender to this. In a moment of clarity, Eleanor remembered the conversations she had shared with Samuel, the late-night discussions about the nature of power and the price it demanded. Love, friendship, vulnerabilities, these were the true lights in her life. She could not forsake them for a lie wrapped in shadow. With newfound resolve, she pressed her palm forward, forcing the sigil's light to expand. I won't be afraid anymore. She shouted, and the light blazed, pushing back against the suffocating darkness. For a heartbeat, it worked. The shadows shrank, shrieking in a cacophony of anguish. Samuel's eyes met hers, filled with a glimmer of hope. That's it, Eleanor. You have the strength. Yet the laughter returned, a sinister, echoing sound that reverberated deep within her core. The figure leaned in closer, their voice now almost a hiss. But what will you do when that light begins to dim? When you have to confront the choices that led you here? In that moment, Eleanor's isolation threatened to swallow her whole. The darkness around her morphed into tangible memories, an image of her skipping a family gathering, her friends' disappointed faces, and the day she risked it all for a scrap of dark knowledge. Don't look back. Focus. Samuel urged, eyes locked on her, fighting against the encroaching shadows. His faith was a lifeline, but she feared losing him in this dark storm. But fear mingled with courage as she finally understood the true price of knowledge was more than just a choice. It was the acknowledgement of her human flaws, the acceptance that she could both strive for greatness and cherish those who mattered most. What are you willing to give up? The figure sneered, tilting its head mockingly. And everything came rushing back in a wave of clarity. I choose to embrace what I've lost, Eleanor declared, voice steady. I refuse to let you dictate my fate. With a surge of willpower, she threw her free hand forward. The light exploded outward in a brilliant wave, illuminating the entire space and banishing the darkness momentarily. Run! Samuel exclaimed, grabbing her hand as he took off towards the door. But as they dashed for freedom, the shadows writhed, reforming into a fierce tumult, blocking their path. You may escape now, but know this: it's not over, the figure hissed, its shape shifting, becoming more monstrous, more primal. The door loomed ahead, a glimmer of hope behind the churning darkness. Just as they reached it, Eleanor's heart seized. What if this was only the beginning? As she flung the door open, the reality of their escape felt precarious. There was no turning back. What lay beyond could be a trap or a chance at redemption. The pulsating energy around her screamed in rebellion, and before she stepped through, a final chilling laugh echoed behind. Prepare yourself, Eleanor. You have awakened something far greater than you realized. What had they unleashed? And could they survive its repercussions? Eleanor stumbled into the blinding light, the cool air washing over her like a wave of fresh hope. But before she could catch her breath, the door slammed shut behind her with a resounding thud, like a final verdict echoing in a silent courtroom. Panic bubbled in her chest as darkness clawed at the edges of this new world. Samuel! She yelled. The uncertainty of their escape swirled around her. She reached back for the door, but it had vanished, leaving behind nothing but a smooth, cold wall. What just happened? Samuel stood next to her, eyes wide, scanning their surroundings. I don't know, his voice trembled slightly. But we have to move. Now. They were in a vast chamber, illuminated by a bizarre glow that flickered like dying fireflies. Glinting shadows danced along the walls, creating grotesque shapes against the stone. It felt alive, suffocatingly so, as if it sought to reclaim them. Do you feel that? Eleanor whispered, a shiver running down her spine. It's like, we're being watched, he replied, backing away from the wall. His usual bravado was thinning, revealing the fear gnawing at his resolve. Without warning, the center of the chamber trembled ominously. Cracks snaked along the floor like spider webs, sending chills through Eleanor. Something was awakening beneath them. We have to get out of here, Samuel. It could be before she could finish, the ground erupted. A swirling mass of shadows spiraled up from the cracks, forming into a shape that mirrored the figure that had taunted them earlier. Its eyes glowed like twin embers, piercing through the dimness. Did you truly think you could escape? It hissed, each word drenched in cruelty. You are just as bound to the darkness as I am. Eleanor's heart raced as fear surged through her veins. The sigil still pulsed in her palm, and she clutched it tightly, willing its light to aid her. You don't control us. I choose my own path. Ah, but your path is littered with the sins of your past, the creature taunted. Every regret, every betrayal, they make you weak. Embrace them. Let them in. The shadows around it twisted, forming images of the very memories Eleanor had tried so hard to run from: her father's disappointment when she chose ambition over family, her best friend's betrayal, the countless sacrifices made for a future that felt ever elusive, with each memory replayed, a weight pressed down on her chest, suffocating her will. "No!" Eleanor shouted, shoving against that weight. "I won't let you win." Behind her, Samuel clenched a fist, as if drawing courage. "We can fight this. Together. Remember who we are." His voice was fierce, cutting through the suffocating darkness, igniting something an ember of hope. But as Eleanor prepared to strike with the sigil, a twisted smile crossed the creature's face. "Foolish mortals. There is more at play than you can comprehend. Completing your journey lies not just in defeating me, but in facing the true depths of your essence." Before Eleanor could comprehend, shadows surged forward, engulfing them both in a cold embrace. It was in this moment of despair that the sigil flared violently, blinding her once again. Then silence. Eleanor felt a sudden rush, weightless, spinning before crashing onto solid ground. Dazed, she blinked against the harsh light, struggling to rise. They were somewhere else entirely. "Samuel?" She called out, but her voice quivered as it faded into the unfamiliar space around them. Danger loomed over her. Had they escaped only to fall into a deeper trap? In the distance, she heard laughter. It wasn't just the figure S, it echoed with voices she knew, friends, family. "What have you done?" Eleanor gripped the sigil tightly, panic clawing at her throat. A voice lingered in her mind, whispering dangerously. "You have awakened something far greater than you realized." Where was she? What awaited them now? She bit her lip, heart racing, yearning for Samuel, but knowing they were bound to face whatever this new nightmare held together. Eleanor braced herself as she stepped forward, uncertainty and dread mixing in her veins. What lay ahead? Would they truly unravel the truth of their past, or fall deeper into the shadows? The air was thick with confusion and dread. Eleanor blinked, trying to adjust her vision, but the scene ahead shifted like a mirage. The laughter flowed through the swirling shapes around her like a dark river, pulling her closer to a shore of grotesque familiarity. "Samuel!" She shouted again, her voice breaking, desperation clawing up from her gut. She stumbled forward, her feet heavy against the ground, which pulsed unnaturally beneath her. The sigil in her hand felt warm, vibrating with energy, but she needed Samuel. Without him, this journey was a treacherous cliff edge. Then she heard a familiar voice, ringing clear amidst the chaos. "Eleanor." It was faint but clear, like light piercing through the murky depth of water. She turned, scanning the area, heart racing anew. "Where are you?" she cried, spinning around, scanning the shifting shadows. "Right here." Samuel's voice came again, stronger this time. "But we're not alone." Eleanor felt a cold sweep brush past her, like a warning of approaching danger. A shadow detached itself from the swirling mass and drifted closer. At first, it seemed harmless, just another figment of the mocking laughter, but as it approached, Eleanor's blood ran cold. It took shape like the ghost of someone she once knew. She squinted, recognizing the features, though twisted and distorted. It was her best friend, Meredith, her expression a mask of sorrow and accusation. "You left me behind, Eleanor," the visage lamented, voice echoing painfully. "You can't outrun your ghosts." "No," Eleanor whispered, shaking her head violently. "This isn't real." Yet, the figure lunged forward, enveloped in swirling tendrils of darkness that flickered like flames. It clawed at the air. "But it is. Just like all the times you chose ambition over what mattered." Eleanor stumbled back, agony blooming in her heart. The memories flooded her, bursting forth like water breaking through a dam. Memories of laughter, friendship, and the moments she had pushed aside to chase her dreams. The shame clenched around her heart, tightening until it felt impossible to breathe. "No." She gasped, spinning around, searching for Samuel. His figure stood a few feet away, wrestling with the shapes that righted themselves across him. A person from his past emerged too, a flickering distortion of his mother, her brow furrowed, disappointment etched in her features. "You abandoned us," she cried. "Samuel." Eleanor shouted, fear clawing at her throat. They were trapped, each haunted by their own mistakes and failures. We have to fight them. But the shadows of their pasts were relentless, approaching like a wave about to crash down upon them. The echoing laughter morphed into a chorus, taunting them both, urging them to surrender to their grief and guilt. With sudden clarity, Eleanor looked at Samuel, who was struggling to fend off the specter of his mother. Despite the horror around them, their eyes met, and she saw a flicker of resolve. They weren't just spectators, they were battling this together. Remember who we are. She yelled, desperation fueling her words. We can overcome this. The sigil flared again with its radiant glow, illuminating the shadows that surrounded them. They had power, but it required something from them, an acceptance of their past without surrendering to it. Fight! She screamed again, rallying her spirit behind the sigil. Samuel's eyes brightened, nodding with agreement, a spark igniting in his heart. Together, they stood firm against the oncoming tide of darkness, drawing strength from their bond as they prepared to confront their memories rather than run from them. But just as they took their stand, the laughter crescendoed, turning into a deafening roar, and the ground shook violently beneath their feet. Are you ready? A chilling voice sneered from the depths of the shadows, mixing with the cacophony. Eleanor's heart thudded painfully in her chest. Ready for what? The weight of their pasts pressed down heavier, but they had ignited something together that would not be easily extinguished. What darkness stirred beyond the shadows? Could they unravel the hold of their memories, or would they drown in them forever? The shadows loomed like a storm gathering strength. Eleanor felt the heat of the sigil in her grip, almost burning with intensity, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. Samuel's face was etched with determination, but fear swirled in his eyes. Can we really fight them? He shouted, trying to drown out the phantoms clawing at their pasts. What if we can't escape? Eleanor clenched her jaw, fighting back the doubt creeping into her mind. We have to. We owe it to them, to ourselves. The weight of Meredith's words hung heavily in the air. Memories flooded Eleanor's thoughts, moments of joy interlaced with regret. She was strong, but guilt gnawed at her heart. She had to show that the past couldn't dictate their future. With a primal scream, she focused on the sigil, pouring every ounce of her will into its light. A wave of energy erupted around her, pushing back against the darkness. Samuel was beside her, mirroring her stance, drawing strength from her. The spectral figures hesitated, distorted mouths agape in silent outrage. Stand firm. Samuel shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Whatever they throw at us, we don't have to let them win. The shadows writhing around them were edged with flickers of light, a shimmering force fighting to break free. The energy crackled as Eleanor and Samuel fed it their most powerful emotions: love, fear, anger. Whatever tangled mess their pasts had created, they needed to face it head-on. Suddenly, the ground trembled as Meredith lunged forward, her form resolute and menacing. You allowed ambition to blind you, Eleanor. No. Eleanor screamed back, feeling the heat of determination surge in her chest. She saw Samuel standing strong, a flicker of hope igniting. You're a part of me, but you don't control me. As the words left her lips, a burst of light shot from the sigil, illuminating the dark waves of torment and distorting their malice. Samuel raised his hand, his voice steady. We acknowledge our pasts, but we choose our paths. Eleanor's heart raced. The figures around them froze, and with a deafening crack, the dark laughter faded into a haunting silence. But the calm was short-lived. From behind Meredith, an even darker shadow loomed, colossal and frightening. It wasn't just guilt now, it was regret, a tempest of every choice they had ever made. The air vibrated with a chilling voice, low and sinister. You think you can defy your fate? You are bound by what you've done. No. Eleanor cried, clenching the sigil tightly. It flared, mirroring her defiance. We define our fate. It's not too late to change what we've done. The towering shadow laughed, an ugly sound that sent a shiver through Eleanor's bones. Then face the consequences. The ground shook violently as the shadow surged forward, extending dark tendrils that writhed like serpents. Fear gripped Eleanor's heart as the ground beneath seemed to split open, revealing an abyss of horrors from her past. "Samuel!" Eleanor shouted, their eyes locking in a moment of shared bravery. With a fierce determination, they stood together, hearts pounding as the darkness closed in, ready to engulf them. But just then, a radiant light seemed to emerge from the sigil, wrapping around them like a shield, pushing back the tendrils. Could it be enough? "Eleanor." Samuel's voice pierced the chaos. "We need to trust each other completely." As the shadow lunged once more, they held hands, feeling the bond strengthen, the sigil blazing with light that pulsed like a heartbeat. They were ready to confront the darkness, but at what cost? What awaited them in the depths of their souls? Would the bond they forged be enough to withstand the onslaught, or had they unleashed something far worse? A blinding flash erupted from the sigil, swirling around them in a protective cocoon. The tendrils hesitated, hissing as they recoiled from the light. For a moment, Eleanor and Samuel felt a surge of hope course through their veins, pushing back the dread that threatened to collapse their world, but that moment was fleeting. The colossal shadow roared again, a sound so deep it rattled the very essence of their being. "Hope is a fragile thing," it sneered, and its tendrils began to stretch toward the light, darkening the brilliance around them. Eleanor felt a bead of sweat trickle down her spine. "We can do this," she shouted, channeling her fear into a rallying cry. "Trust in this moment, trust in each other." Samuel squeezed her hand tighter, resolute. "We've faced our pasts. Now we face what comes next." Together, they focused on the sigil. Light erupted from their joined hands like a beacon in the tempest. At first, it felt weak, an ember in a storm. But slowly, the flickers of hope surged into a fierce blaze, illuminating the shadows. The ground beneath them shook, not from fear but from power, flowing through them like an electric current. The shadow faltered for the first time, a rift of uncertainty streaking across its surface. It was enough to feed their courage, enough for Samuel to voice what he felt. "Eleanor, look. The darkness is retreating." Eleanor's breath quickened as she gazed into the abyss. Small victories made her heart race. "We have to keep it up. Push it back further," she yelled, letting the energy flow from her heart to the sigil and beyond. The shadow shrieked in defiance, growing more tumultuous, twisting and swirling as if seeking escape. They pulled back, as if sensing devastation in their defeat, but still lashed viciously like wild beasts, writhing around them in fury. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the black depths. Smaller, yet equally threatening, its face twisted into a malevolent grin. "You're playing with forces greater than yourselves," it hissed, eyes glimmering with malice that chilled Eleanor's bones. "You will never be free." Eleanor's stomach dropped as recognition surged through her. Gareth. She had thought him long gone, a relic of their shared past, buried beneath their regrets and guilt. "You're not real. You're just a manifestation of my fear." His laugh echoed like shards of glass. "You think you can dismiss me? I was the catalyst of your despair. Everything you've done, every choice, every betrayal was my doing." With a swell of renewed anger, Eleanor gritted her teeth. "No. You're not in control anymore. You don't rule my life." As she spoke, the sigil pulsed brighter, feeding off her ferocity. She felt Samuel's strength at her side, unwavering. "This ends here," he declared, stepping forward as if to shield Eleanor. With a single, powerful command from Eleanor, the sigil blazed, light expanding outward like an explosion. It enveloped Gareth, illuminating every dark corner of his being, unraveling the tangled threads of regret and pain he represented. But as the shadows screamed in agony and flailed like dying animals, the air hitched around them as the ground beneath shifted violently once more. An unseen force was building, the tension so thick it made their lungs ache. Was this truly the end of their past, or merely the beginning of something darker? With one final surge, the light consumed Gareth. He vanished, but before the echoes of his laughter faded, Eleanor felt an eerie calm sweep over her. "Samuel," Eleanor whispered, trembling. What if he's not the only one? What if there's more?" Before Samuel could respond, the ground cracked wide open around them, revealing a labyrinthine depth filled with darkness, a reminder of every choice, every regret they buried. The shadows whispered promises of despair, like sirens calling them into the abyss. Eleanor. Samuel grasped her shoulder, his eyes wide with dread. We have to decide now. Do we dare go deeper? The very essence of their fears lingered in the air, lingering like a fog threatening to consume them entirely. Did they dare venture beyond the light they had fought so hard to achieve? What would they confront in that infinite darkness? The answers lay below, waiting for them to take the plunge. Eleanor stood at the edge of the darkness, the abyss swirling with forgotten memories and unaddressed regrets. The weight of every choice pressed down like a heavy cloak, competing against the fiery pulse emanating from the sigil in her palm. Beside her, Samuel's grip tightened, grounding her as the shadows writhed hungrily, endlessly tempting them forward into the unknown. Eleanor, Samuel said, voice low and steady as he searched her eyes. We can choose to face this together. But I need you to decide. Are we going deeper? The swirling thoughts and fears swamped her, a storm of doubts and desires. Yet, standing here, she felt an ember of hope flicker deep within her, a flame born from their shared struggles, from the darkness they had just against. We've come this far, she said, her voice firm despite the tremors of uncertainty clawing at her heart. We have to confront what's left behind. With a nod, Samuel pressed closer, their hands linked as they stepped into the dark. The shadows caressed them like a cold wind, each whisper echoing her fears. Eleanor felt the memories surge, familiar faces emerging from the depths, her father's disappointment, the friends she had pushed away, the costs of ambition that had clouded her heart. Suddenly, the darkness shifted violently, 1,000 voices howling in unison, drumming against her skull. You cannot escape. They screamed. You thrive in betrayal, embrace it. A rush of heat surged through her, she remembered all she had sacrificed to reach this point. The laughter of those who had once stood by her flickered like a dying flame. No. Eleanor shouted, pushing back. I want to let you control me any longer. As she concentrated on the sigil, its energy flared against the encroaching shadows. Samuel stood firm beside her, his presence a rock amid the chaos. We will push back, he declared. We will rewrite our fate. Their united strength illuminated the depths, casting a shimmering glow that dispelled the darkness momentarily. The shadows hesitated, recoiling from the light as it pierced through their frigid grip. But then, a morose figure drifted from the depths. Gareth's twisted form emerged again, lingering with a smirk. You think you can escape me? Gareth hissed, his voice echoing with a familiar malice. I am every decision you made. I am your reality. Eleanor's heart pounded, but she steeled herself, focusing on the sigil's light. You're just a shadow of my past, one I choose to leave behind. She flexed her fingers, a surge of power that pulsed back against Gareth's influence. Samuel stepped forward, propelled by Eleanor's strength. Together, he shouted, and the two of them poured every ounce of determination into the sigil. Light erupted like a shooting star against the darkness smirking before them. No! Gareth screamed, but the brilliance grew, washing over the figure and into the abyss, forcing the shadows to contract, struggling against the illumination. But instead of fading away, Gareth's form twisted in agony. You think this will save you? You cannot fight your memories. As the shadows around them bent and shrieked, Eleanor's resolve solidified, anchoring her mind. I can face them, she said firmly, muscles taut. I am not my past. I embrace the light, and I choose to move forward. With that, she drove the sigil into the ground, erupting a fervor of light that reverberated through the entire expanse. The shadows scattered, dissolving into motes of darkness, piercing through the very fabric of the confrontation. For a moment, silence fell sweet, undisturbed. Hope flared bright, perhaps they had severed the binding threads of their burdens. But Samuel turned to her, his face grave. They may be gone, but the scars remain. Are we ready to heal? Eleanor thought about it, pictured the life ahead, devoid of shadows and whispered doubts. If we tread together, we can forge a path, she breathed, stepping closer to him. Holding hands, They shared a knowing glance, a pulse of courage and resilience that it was a promise, both to each other and themselves. As they turned to leave the shadows behind, a quiet dread flickered within her, a fleeting caution. What other shadows still awaited them? But they stepped toward the light, ready to embrace the warmth and heal, forging the future through mutual strength. Whatever awaited, they would face it side by side. The darkness behind them started to fade, its hold crumbling like ash cast to the wind. And with every step forward, every promise made, Eleanor knew, this was their choice to define their fate anew. The light enveloped them, illuminating possibility, an uncharted chapter ahead. Now, as the echoes of the past dwindled into silence, a wave of hope surged within Eleanor's heart. She was free not just from the shadows that haunted her but from the weight of her own decisions. The battle had been fought, but the journey was just beginning. The future glimmered bright, a testament to the power of choice and connection. But it was time to step into it, with Samuel at her side, and embrace the life they would build together from here on out. You need to subscribe now. You can't miss these exclusive, mind-bending stories that are just around the corner. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and show your support. And flood the comments section with your thoughts about the story and theories on what's coming next. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this jaw-dropping conclusion.